Hello friends, painting enthusiasts, and welcome to a brand new video. Today we are going to be taking a simple blank canvas and turning it into something realistic, vibrant, and hopefully also something that just feels nice and inspiring. Moving along, we're not actually going to start by putting paint on the canvas. I'm going to head over to my drafting desk and start a bit of a sketch for just figuring out where all of my subjects are. I personally like to boot up Photoshop, apply a grid, do a sketch in reference to that. However, if you don't love the drawing process in general, you just want to jump right into the painting, you can download the traceable up over on my Patreon, where you can also get the ad-free version of this video. Also, trying something new up there where I upload the real-time drawing process of the traceable. So if you want to see it all come together, that's now an option. I'll link to that in the video description. You know where to go. That said, once we have our sketch complete, we are going to select our brushes, pick our pigments, and from there, we can jump into the painting process. Yet again, we'll grab our 1-inch flat-headed brush, and we'll also make the brush just a little bit damp to help keep our paint wet longer, and it'll also help with the blending process. So we'll start by grabbing a good amount of our titanium white, about half of that Mars black, and about an equal amount of the titanium white in our ultramarine blue. Maybe double down on that blue, just to make sure that it is nice and rich. And we'll start applying that in the top right-hand corner of our painting. Then we'll work our way down. And while acrylic paints do dry quickly, I find that if I work in an X-shaped pattern like this, I can move paint not only left and right, but up and down really quickly. So I'm never worried about it drying on the canvas before I can mix with it in these larger areas in skies. We just want to make sure that we don't have any of that canvas showing through. It's also worth noting that I'm painting over a lot of my pre-existing drawings, not all of them, not the flames, not the actual candles, but a lot of the rest, because I want to layer that on top of this darker background. And I like to sketch it out beforehand just so I have an idea of where everything's going to go. I'm better acquainted with the image as a whole. We will redraw that, so don't worry. Now from here, we'll jump into the bottom, and we'll do so with an abundance of our Mars black. We'll warm it up with our burnt sienna. That way it's different and in good contrast from the open sky that we can see. And we'll apply that initially right under the blues, but we're not going to touch them just yet. So you can see there's just a little bit of separation between the two. And then we'll start to bring this down. We use the great sharp edge of the flat-headed brush to carve around the candle. But once we have the majority of this midsection of the painting covered up, we're going to go back in between these two and do a nice blend. Said blend will just be taking that blue, that black, working in an X-shaped pattern, back and forth between the two. And if the blue is still wet, this is going to be really easy. If the blue is starting to dry, you want to go in with a slightly more damp brush, and that should help. But as you can see, I'm kind of in this place where the blue is drying, but it's still wet enough. I'll grab some extra blue. We'll apply that right above. We'll work that in like so. Have that nice subtle soft transition down, and this is all going to be an out of focus background, so we want to make sure that this bottom area, this transition, is nice and soft. So we'll just keep bumping up our blues until we get that subtle soft transition from one to the next. There we go. We're finding it. Then we'll finish off the background by carving around our candle holder as well as our actual candle. Large flathead brush is great for this because you can really just maneuver around things sharply, get those clean edges, and then we can apply a little more pressure with our brush and work it into the negative space. So now, yet again, we do a nice little cut. I have a Polaroid drawn in here, just on the window ledge. And then we can just cover up all of that remaining space with a little bit of a dig and a lot of this X-shaped pattern. You want to use a good amount of paint, you want a nice thick layer, and you want to cover all of the tooth of the canvas. So as you can see, we have a very simple start to our painting, a nice little warm-up. And I personally love that when you start a painting, get those motor skills firing, feel good about the medium, and then right after this we can jump into the next step. There we go. Okay, so we have a great background on there. Now I'm going to let it dry, and once it is dry, I'm going to resketch all the little line work that we had in there. Again, if you'd like help with the drawing process, I do have the drawing video of the initial trace bowl up over on Patreon, and then we're going to paint in some beautiful bokeh. So all of these circles that you see, that's what we're painting next. Now I've color coordinated a lot of these just to make my painting job a little bit easier. And I am going to mix up an orange using a cadmium yellow deep hue, cadmium red, a little bit of titanium white, hint of burnt sienna to just take that saturation down a little bit, make it cohesive with our shadows, and from there we'll switch our brush. The filbert will work wonderfully for this because it has a rounded edge, and that'll make for a lot of really soft blended applications. So we'll grab our pigment, I'll head into the center here, and then I'll just do a nice little rotation. This is incredibly thin. As you can see, I had a lot of water on my brush. You can go for ones that are a bit more thick. So we go in here with more pigment. There's less of that canvas showing through, but sometimes you're going to want it to be more thin. So with this, we're going to just be mindful of the fact that some are going to be more opaque, some will be softer. It's not wrong in either scenario. Some are going to overlap. And we'll go back and we'll make sure these do get some added pigment in a future layer. There we go. Now we'll also move down in the painting. We'll do a couple more of these little guys. Easy way of accomplishing a lot of them is you just go in with your brush and you do a little twist. So that's a great trick for the tiny ones. Then we do little touch-ups. But once we have the majority of them applied, at least in this palette, I'll go back and I'll double down on the ones that I want to be thicker. At this point, most of them had an opportunity to dry, so they'll adopt paint fairly well. And with that, you can start to see a variance from the ones with and without the second layer. So that versus that. It's starting to look good. There we go. And this is going to be more yellow later on, but we can add a bit now. It's quite cathartic. Again, a nice, easy, relaxed start to the painting. Now we'll continue interjecting some diversity by making more of a yellow heavy one. So this is cad yellow deep hue, yellow ochre, titanium white, and I'm mixing it into our past mix so that it's still nice and warm. Then going back to the nice filbert brush, and we'll create that variance which will, I feel like, dramatically improve the piece. You can see that when we place the yellow over the past applied orangey peach pigment, you get this warmer look. Then when it's over the almost black, you get a bit more of a greenish yellow. So another way of interjecting variance in a pretty easy way. Here you can see our first big overlap of two different colors. And if I can see a little bit of the edge showing through of this in here, I actually like that a lot. I think it's a neat look. Here we have ones designated as green, but I will use some yellow because it will turn to be a little bit of a green. And then we can double down on the green later should we want to. I think I want maybe a bit more over here. As you add them, you'll find other areas where you want to expand, at which point you can deviate from the drawing and the sketch and you can just add them where it feels right. And that's essentially what I'm doing right here. Though we still do have quite a few to really go in and solidify. I think a nice yellowish one up here could look great. Bring the eye up in the painting. But we do want to make sure that we have good variety throughout. Apologies if my hand is occasionally in the way. One of those things where sometimes you just get so into the painting process you kind of forget about everything else. Now on our palette we'll mix up a green using our Cad Yellow Deep Hue, our Yellow Ochre, a little bit of our Ultramarine Blue. As you can see we already have a nice green. Let's brighten it and thicken it with some Titanium White. And then we can double down on the Cad Yellow and the Yellow Ochre. The Ultramarine Blue. Everything that gives it saturation. And then we can finally jump into the green ones. One of those things where we don't expect to see a lot of green city lights, but they are out there in many forms. And they're going to play a great role in today's painting. Because we don't want too much of the orange, too much of the yellow, because our actual candles are the orange and the yellow. So we want those colors around the painting to complement it, but we don't want to fully kind of take over with that. So we'll just throw these in all of these great little spots. There we go. Because of the Titanium White, they're looking pretty thick and doing their job well. I think I'll create a bit of a softer one over here. And by softer one, I mean I'm blending the edges more so that it looks like we have it just kind of radiating out. And this is why we really wanted the filbert brush. Being able to create soft blends for these is so easy. So now we have the hard round ones and we have the soft ones as well. I think we'll have a lot of that down here. Example, just working over the edge with the corner of my brush many a time, and it gives it this great glowy look. You can do this with all of the colors. I just wanted to start doing it with green because again, I didn't want to overdo anything else. And I thought this was a good place to start. Let me make the center a bit more opaque. There we go. Now, what color works really well with green? It's complementary color red. So we'll grab some of our Cad red, a little bit of our Naples, not our Naples yellow, our brand Sienna, actually. We'll make that nice and prominent, add a hint of Titanium White, but we don't want a lot because we don't want to turn it into a pink. We just want a hint of it to thicken the red up. And then we can go into our actually red areas and apply these guys. Again, overlapping previous ones is a-okay. And already I think these look great. think we can also do another one up here. I see it in the reference photo. I forgot to sketch it in, but I see it now, so we're just going to work that through there. I think we can also do another through here. You can see how they're overlapped, they're connecting. We're getting these really neat, larger movements. You can use your finger to blend the edges as well as the filbert brush. There we go. And you know what? I think we can have a little bit over here. Make sure that it's balanced on both sides. Don't want too much to draw the eye, but I think that's a really good start. We can always go back and add more. Now, let's go for more of a gray mix. So we'll grab some titanium white, Mars black, add a hint of our blue, cool it down. Now this will be pretty opaque from the onset because it has so much titanium white. So if you want it to be thin, add a lot of water to the mix. And then we blend out from the middle. Make that pretty soft on the outskirts. And we can gray out past saturated ones, should we want to. Start creating combinations of colors, applications. There we go. I like that a lot. Now we'll get close and we'll just double down on thickening up some of our favorites. We don't want anything to be too bright or too vibrant because we don't want to take away from the actual candles, but there are certainly going to be some of these that we want to stand out to a greater degree. So this is our opportunity to go back into those more watery applications and add more proper pigment. Painting this around some of the new areas that I really like. We'll make more of a yellow titanium white mix, something we don't really have a lot of. Like so. It's a little too close to white, but that's beautiful. That's what we were looking for. Don't want too much of it, but we do want some. And maybe a yellow ochre titanium white heavy mix for one of these guys. It's really up to you and which ones you want to accentuate. Just make sure that nothing is too dramatic. There we go. All right, so we have our bokeh. It's looking good now. We're going to let it dry and we're going to apply our first little splatters of rain on the window. This is going to add a lot to the painting. Now the first applications here of the water on the glass are quite easy, but we are going to start with an orange version of it because the light from our candles is going to brighten it up. So I'll grab some of our Cad Yellow Deep Hue, Cad Red, Titanium White, make something nice and bright, nice and warm. Really want it in that orange hue. So lots of cad red and cad yellow. Then we're going to switch our brush to the smaller liner. This is the first time we're using it in this lesson. We'll make sure that it's nice and damp. Then we'll grab our pigment. We'll make it essentially thin like watercolor. We'll aim right around here. By aim, I mean we're going to peel our bristles back. We're just going to let go. And that's going to launch all of these little splatters onto the canvas. Now, the farther away you get, the wider your application will be. So if you want it everywhere, you get farther back. And I do want a little bit everywhere, so I'll do a couple of these, as you can see. But I want the majority of them in this section. So now I get closer, and we'll just continuously apply these beautiful little speckles. And you can see I'm changing the rotation of my brush so that if we get lines, we disrupt them and they feel a little more natural. Then we'll do a light gray mix. So I'll grab an abundance of our titanium white, a little bit of our Mars black, work those two together. And this will be great for the areas that aren't that close to the light and that orange. We can have some in this area as well, but we do want to cover the majority of this with these speckles, and this color is just going to be much more appropriate for areas outside of exactly this vicinity. So we're going in, we're doing our speckles. Ooh, that one is really nice. If you add a lot of water, sometimes you can get these much larger markings. There we go. You can see how it kind of surrounds that spot. But again, we can also do some of those in the middle. We just want this to feel like there's a lot going on out there. And we'll restore kind of an orderly look to it in the next step. Now I'll head to our palette, grab some of our Mars black, hint of titanium white, hint of ultramarine blue, and we'll use this for some intentional detail work. So we'll still use our liner, but we'll go in, and whenever there's a really big light dot, right underneath it, we'll do a little cradle shape. Something that's essentially the bottom of a circle, and then we can start introducing them in larger applications in areas that don't have it. But these are going to be individual little drops that are a bit more visually noticeable. I'm going to try to spread them out pretty well. We can have little clusters here and there, but we want these to be nice and opaque. We want these to just be a good little base for areas yet to come. So lots of little U's. We can, will, and should also apply them over the bokeh. And this will be extremely noticeable, which is great, which is what we want. Shows up in higher contrast areas, and this is where we have the lightest values currently in the painting. We're still going to apply them out into these darker areas because they shouldn't just exist where the bokeh is, but it's a good start and a meaningful area to apply. There we go. Looking pretty good. Then we'll take a step back. We'll grab some of our titanium white. Again, just a hint of our Mars black, just a hint of our ultramarine blue. And we can go in and we can add highlights towards the tops of these. And initially they're going to look a little awkward, but the more we do, the more it'll make sense. And the idea here is that we're just making these look like raindrops on the window. They have a shadow, they have a highlight. It's much more noticeable, again, over the bokeh because we have a mid value there, so the darks and the lights are going to complement it well. And I like to do a little bit of a line for the top, and then I do little taps as well, just to instigate additional reflective details. That said, you can see that I have a lot in this area. I'm going to make sure that I'm not too reliant on that space, that it still feels like it fits the rest of the painting, so we're putting it elsewhere. I'll get you a lot closer for the detail work though. We also want some of these, as you can see, creating little lines. That way it looks like the water started dripping. So I pick my favorites, and then we start to instigate more of these larger movements. And I think this is what starts to solidify the visual of what we're painting. Because for a while it looks a little nebulous, it looks a little abstract, and that's okay. We just want to make sure that we, in the end, get it to looking like this water which is coming down. I'm going to add a little bonus highlight to a lot of them in the areas that are around the flames. So if the flame is here, the highlight's now also on the bottom. Since the flame's here, it's on the left-hand side. Since the flame's here, it's on the right-hand side on this side of the canvas. So you can see we're always changing it depending upon where that light is. Now again, we'll take that step back. We'll grab some extra ultramarine blue Mars black, and I'll start creating these wispy little movements, which will be actual water running down. And this is included in the traceable, so if you have that downloaded, do double check that because you know exactly where these should be. I'm just looking at the traceable on my phone here, and while we do this, we want these to be different from each other. They should be evolving, they should be changing, unique. Sometimes you'll have ones that go a lot farther down than others. So this one, for instance, is going to go into the bokeh at the bottom, and it will have little openings. It's not going to be as thick through the entirety of it. You do want it to be changing here and there. And then we'll head on over to this side. We want it to be essentially beside my flames. I'm going to grab a bit more pigment. You can go in and make this thin initially and then double down on your layers where you like it. Make it more opaque after the fact. And these are really nice, easy touches. Once we grab our titanium white, ultramarine blue, and we go in and we add a highlight on the left-hand side of the ones on the right. This is really far away from the orange light, so I'm going in with more of this bluish gray. But as we get closer to this light, we'll make it more orange. That'll make it unique. Sometimes you're going in with a tap, sometimes it's a drag. But already I think that's a big improvement. We'll grab a bit more. Again, this is pretty far away from the light, so I'll just continue with this pigment. Using a very watery mix, so I'm getting actual drops of water on here, which is a nice touch. We can do little bits down here should we want to, but I think those two are working quite well together. Now let's make more of an orange mix. So cad yellow, cad red, titanium white, beautiful orange. And we'll apply that in the areas that are closest to the flames. We can build this up over layers as well, but we can also throw it into surrounding water droplets. We're just going to continuously build these to match the warmth that's being emitted in this area. Though for the areas that are higher than the flame and lower, we do go back to more of that bluish gray. And now it's going to be cohesive with the other side of the painting, which is really nice. There we go. Okay, so we've got a lot going on. There's a big contrast. We've got some great shadows. We've got some great highlights. I want to bring them in together. And if you really like a high contrast painting, don't do this next step, skip to the next one. But if you want to make it kind of a bit more cohesive, then we're going to do a wash together. To do that, we want to make sure that the canvas is fully dry before we jump into this next step. But we're going to add a nice glow in the window, a nice reflection of that candle, and we'll also make the borders, the edges, again, a little bit more cohesive. Now I'm going to start this wash with something warm, and right here we have a reflection of this candle. It's going to have this glow emanating from this space, and for that I want an orange. So we have our cad red, we have our cad yellow or yellow ochre. Want something not too bright, so we're just at a hint of titanium white, but from there we'll make it very, very watery. Again, much like a watercolor. I'm going to apply it right where that drawing is. And I'm going to move this out, making a lot of my strokes vertically. That way, if in the end they don't get blended, it looks like water working its way through the canvas. Then I'll interject a little bit of titanium white and Mars black to make it a bit more of a gray. We'll grab that, we'll work that over it. It's nice, it's bright, and we want it to dissipate as we move towards our edges. So Mars black, titanium white, looking for a similar value, but this time I want a little bit of blue in it because I want it to get cooler as we move away from that central area. So we'll grab this, we'll apply that to those edges. It's going to look messy for a second. Trust the process. You can see how our darks are getting a little lighter, our lights are getting a little darker. It's bringing everything together. It's also softening the saturation of a lot of the bokeh, which is nice. There we go. And we'll continue taking that over into this side. And you can even see sometimes the water itself drips, and that can leave a really neat effect because we are just trying to create the effect of water dripping. Why not actually have a little bit of that water drip in the background? It's pretty cool. It's very much in line with what we're trying to do. I might aim for a bit of a darker blue for the edges, that way we have a vignetted effect. And that's really bright on the initial look, but that's because it's wet and it's reflective. It's just catching light. As this dries, it will be a lot darker. So keep that in mind. When you do washes, often they are going to be darker than how you actually applied it. There we go. I'm just going to keep working this until a lot of it starts to dry, but I am getting these really nice streaks. And if you don't want any streaks, don't apply any pressure with your brush. If you do want streaks, apply more pressure. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Here I'm going yet again. I'm continuing to build these layers until I am personally very happy. It's one of those things you don't just have to do one, you can keep going. I also want a good amount more of a glow in this section. So grab some of our red, our yellow, we'll apply that right through here. Oh yeah, that'll be beautiful. This will be right where our candle reflections are. We'll let it dissipate towards the edges, we'll just blend it out. We'll let it dissipate towards the bottom, we'll just blend it out. Let it dissipate towards the top, we'll just blend it out. There we go. Nice and clean. Now I'm also going to take this opportunity while it's still wet to grab our filbert, more of our yellow ochre, hint more of our red, and I'm going to, with this, very purposefully paint in more of that glow. The filbert is great to get these rounded blends, and we're just going to build up the opacity, make this more thick than the other washes. That way we have something that feels like it has a real glow to it. It's brighter, it's dominant, it's beautiful. There we go. You can see how all of the little white and grays, the dots, are now adopting this color in a really special way. Lots of detail. This is one of those paintings where you can paint it really simply without all of the detail, or you can go the extra mile, the extra step, and really bring it into something unique and special. And we're trying to do all the extra layers, we're trying to do the washes, we're trying to get all of the nice little changes, but I think we're doing a good job. I think it's working. So after a certain point, we have just too much water on here to continue working. We probably want to take a break, but what we can also do is we can also take our liner, take our Mars Black, and this is the one thing I would recommend going back in and doing. More of those darker applications. You know, we should probably have a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of our ultramarine blue, but these darker mixes behind these, behind our little droplets. We want to do that again. It didn't show up the first time because the sky was so dark, but now, because the wash made it a bit softer in value, we can go in, we can add these, and it actually works really, really well. So I'd recommend taking a little bit of time, re-interjecting some of these darker mixes towards the top, and it should really pay off. You can also do it while everything's still wet, and it'll have a nice effect. So taking a step back, post wash and post increased darker highlights, I'm really happy with all of this. I think the streaks that we can see from the wash, because it was all done in vertical markings, are still very subtly prevalent, and that adds a lot, gives it that multi-glass look. And at this point, I want to go back into these darker ones, which we've accentuated, and interject a little bit more of the highlight that we do have there and there. We don't want to overdo it because, again, we don't want to overpower the flames, which we will have in a fairly soon step. But let's jump back in and add some brighter details. So from here, we'll grab our liner brush, a little bit more of our titanium white, ultramarine blue, hint of our Mars Black, and then again, We'll add the highlights to the sides that are facing the light. So lots of these little taps. Don't want to do too many, but we can also accentuate the protruding areas of this, which also catch light, and that can be a really nice building factor. Just like that. The idea is when you take a big step back from the painting, you notice the darker lines, you notice the brighter lines, it all kind of comes together very cohesively. Have to be careful that we don't do too many of these bright ones, but I think so far we've been pretty safe, and I really like all of the inclusions. There we go. Maybe add a little bit of a highlight to the bottom of this guy, because we do have the light directly below it. We don't always have to map the exact outline of the darker area either. You can kind of build these out in unique shapes and have the in-between of the color glass. There we go. Alrighty. That looks so much better. Really love how this is coming along. Let's grab a bit more. Now we're adding highlights to more of the right-hand side because we were on the right-hand side of the highlight. There's some really nice little dripping formations through here. You almost feel like the water came down. It's not one of these larger ones, but it's still prominent enough. And we can build up these highlights. Now, yet again, I'm going to take a step back, grab some cad yellow, titanium white, a little bit of our cad red, mix up a nice orangish yellow right here, close to our other yellows. That way we make sure it's similar. We don't want it to make it too bright, we don't want it to be too saturated, but we want to throw in a couple more little tapped highlights where we're going to have the reflection of our candle, and we'll have them staggered. We'll have them lessen as we get towards these edges. And you can see there's just a couple to these spaces, but there's a lot right in here. And I know you're pretty far away for a detail, but this is one of those things where the actual tap doesn't really matter seeing that. Seeing the congestion and how it dissipates. That's what you really want to pay attention to. You can even paint holding your brush much farther back. You can paint standing much farther back and tap these on from here. That way you make sure that you have a lot in this area, in this vicinity, but you don't have a lot on the outskirts. You just have enough to show that that light does work its way out to a point. I think we do want to brighten the glow itself, so maybe that's the next step. Do want this to dry though, otherwise we'll just blend it all out. There we go. So yet again, we are nice and close. I'm just going to grab a bit more of that watery orange. I think it could be a bit more orange. I think it's a little more yellow with that first application. There we go. We'll work that into the center. Again, waited for everything to dry, that way I'm not ripping up any of these little dots. Slowly having it dissipate with the corner of the brush, just blending it out nice and soft. Making a lot of these applications vertical despite the fact that it is blended softly just in case. Then we get that nice streaky look on the window. It actually adds a lot. There we go. Sometimes I'll apply purposefully a little bit more pressure to get more of that glow, more of that streaky look. But for the most part, this is all very soft. And if you find that your filbert brush isn't working as well as you want to, I'm curious what I'm working with, there is the brush set I use in all of these painting lessons linked in the video description. I've been using it for years, and I love it. That said, I think this is looking really good, so let's take some steps back and make sure that it's as well balanced as we think it is. Good morning. It is a brand new day. We are jumping back into the painting, and today we paint the actual candle, paint the reflection of the candle. I've gone ahead and just done a sketch on the canvas using a little bit of Conte woodless colored pencils to reallocate those subjects in the appropriate colors, but I'm excited. We have some fresh paint, and let's jump into really finishing this thing. All right, so we're going to start with a damp flat-headed brush, and we'll paint the bottom of our candle holder with a nice dark base. I'll use some Cad Red to warm it up because it will get some of that warm light from the actual candle. Use a little bit of titanium white because we don't want it to be a pure black, and we do want the red hues to show through. We'll take that and we'll just start cutting it into the top here. I'm going to do so on both sides. Do like to work the edges before I paint inside because we have a lot of sharp, clean pigment right now. We have a nice damp brush that all makes creating these sharp lines so much easier. And as you can see, we have these multi-tiers. So again, we get these edges, we make sure they're nice and sharp, then we get into this area that kind of descends down. You can see the sketch. I'm not too worried about overlapping the actual drawing because we can always just go back and erase it, but I am definitely using it as a guide. There we go. You can kind of draw in the individual movements for the sake of getting a better understanding of the subject, like that. And as we start to move down, I do want that warmer mix on the top of the base here. However, when we get towards the bottom, we are going to switch it. So now, I think I'll make markings to fill in this empty space in the shape that it will be presented. So this is round, it rounds like this. So my strokes are going this way. That way, if I see any strokes at the end, they are cohesive with the general movement of the subject. Just like so. And you can see a little bit of them. So it's worth doing. We'll also fill in this area. It's going to get darker. We didn't go with the Pure Mars Black. We went something a bit brighter. And we're not going to use the Pure Mars Black, but it's going to be closer for sure. I'll apply the highlight vertically at the bottom. But then once I get here, I'm going to switch my mix to be significantly more ultramarine blue heavy, Mars Black. Again, fill in the edges as we do. I'm going to make sure that this is nice and clean, and then we'll work our way up, blend it into that warm area, because we're getting farther away from the flame, and the metal itself should reflect that in its hue. So it gets more blue and cooler towards the bottom. We can also have more of that blue hue towards the bottom of each of these portions, and then we'll blend that up. As you can see, it gets pretty intuitive pretty quickly. Then we can go back in with more of the Cad Red mix. Just make sure that it's nice and thick. Right now, we should have a pretty harmonious blend of the pigments, but we'll start making it a bit more contrast heavy and interesting in the next application. Now, because it's drying, it's very reflective, quite wet, though it will look a lot darker once it is fully dry. In the meantime, I am going to grab more of that Mars Black. I'm going to mix it into our cool mix, make it as dark as we can while still having a little bit of that cool hue in it. And then I'm going to just create a little opening right here on both sides. And this is essentially mapping the top of our candle holder and the part that goes inside. That inset area isn't going to get the light from this, so it's going to be darker, it's going to be cooler. We're using a blue to allocate that shadow. And it's just essentially an elongated oval like this. Barely noticeable, but we do make those small details because long term they do add up. All right, so it's almost dry, and we're going to grab a good amount of our burnt umber, a little bit of our cad red, makes a nice brassy, earthy orange. Grab a little bit of Mars black, titanium white, equal mixtures of both. We'll desaturate it just a little bit, but not too much. Then for the application, I'm going to apply this towards the back top rim of our candle holder. Very small applications, as you can see. We'll go to the other side, do the same. And then we're going to move forward. And an easy way of figuring out where exactly is going right underneath your candle. And then we're going to bring it back up and create a bridge using the corner of our brush. Like so. Not too tricky. And we'll make it get nice and tight right along the edges, and then it gets larger as we move towards that central area, because perspective will make this portion look a bit more wide. Now we are still waiting for this to dry. When we step back, you really can see how reflective it is, but again, we'll just give that some time. We'll build this up to be a bit brighter. We'll add some titanium white, a little bit of our cad yellow, a little bit of our yellow ochre, back to the burnt sienna, making it brighter, making it still quite saturated. And we'll switch on over to our smaller flat-headed brush because we want to work with a bit more detail. So with this, I'm going to head into the front initially, and I'll start working my way around. If I leave a couple brush strokes in here, I actually like it. It's a nice texture in the metal. There we go. And we just do that little wrap around. When we go over to second time, typically, especially with the larger flathead brush, you can expand the size and the shape, and we don't really want to do that. So we switch to this brush to have that added level of control. That way we aren't constantly expanding how large this is. We're just building on the values, the highlights, the hues. Then I'll grab a bit more titanium white, burnt sienna. Again, brightening. We'll work that into the central area. And we'll let it dissipate towards the edges. So it's brightest right here, and then it's less so towards the left and the right hand side. Going to be pretty careful with this. I'll also do a little bit towards the back. This will help it stand out nicely. Also make it a bit more dimensional. I'd also like to note that I am painting on a bit of an angle, so if things perspective-wise aren't perfect, I will just fix that off camera. But again, if you want it to be just right, there is the traceable. There we go. Okay, I like this, I think. We're off to a good start. We're creating nice depth. Let's get you a bit closer. So at this point, I've let all of this dry. I'm now going to make a much more orange mix. So a lot of the cad yellow deep, a lot of the cad red, a little bit of the Naples yellow, a little bit of the burnt sienna. And this, I'm actually not going to incorporate any titanium white or Mars black. I want to keep that saturation. We have a good, fairly bright base to work on top of, so we don't need those more opaque hues like titanium white in this mix. This can work almost like a wash if we want it to. I'm going to apply it around the front. I'll let it dissipate as we work towards the edges, but you can also see application style has changed. And now I'm taking the brush and I'm doing these markings in the direction from essentially the candle outwards. So if we're here, then the marking goes like this. If we're here, then the marking goes like this. If we're directly in front, then this goes directly in front. And this is just going to give us some really nice dimension. A little bit of extra texture when you can see the brush strokes. There we go. Has that real warmth, that real glow from what we have going on up there. We can also take a little bit of this, and I do mean a little bit. I'm going to work it along the edges, not towards the bottom, but towards the top portions. And I'll work it back in. Work it around here. This is just going to show that the light's reflecting off of the window and the other general areas. We'll apply it just towards the bottom, a hint. Like that. So, as an update, I tried painting the Polaroids, and I liked that they added character and they made it a more unique piece, but at the same point, I felt like they were a little bit distracting and too much of an ambiguous subject to not distract from what we really wanted the eye on. So once I painted them in roughly, I realized that they weren't what I wanted, and I went back and I started repainting all of the background. However, we did the background in a lot of different steps, and redoing all of those would be quite timely. So what I did instead was I went over it with a grayish blue. I tried to make it streaky with very vertical markings, and then I went in with additional white, or rather a more white mix. It wasn't a pure white, but it did have more white in it. And I made more vertical markings, trying to make them stand out, trying to have those lines, try to create those streaks, because that looks like water running down our window. So from there, we just added a couple more of the lights in the background, that bokeh effect, and I tried to do so with much more desaturated hues than I initially used, because we did a lot of washes on top of the initial mixes, and I wanted to render the color of that bokeh with those washes rather than the original bokeh color. So I just had a little bit more white and black into the finalized applications. But I do like that a lot better. I think it's simple, I think it's clean, I like the leading lines of the bokeh, and I'm actually very happy with how it turned out. So now here it is from a bit of a distance. Again, much happier with it, though I do want to accentuate some of the warmer highlights around this. So I'm going to grab some of our burnt sienna, a little bit of our cad red, yellow, titanium white, hint of our Mars black. We'll mix up a nice, warm, earthy mid value. We'll switch on over. You know what? We won't switch on over. I'm going to keep the larger flat-headed brush. I'm just going to make sure that it doesn't have a lot of pigment on the sides. I am just going to add a bit of a highlight to the sides, like we did earlier with our smaller flat-headed brush, which I am going to use yet again to instigate a little bit more. We just don't want it to look flat. And this is going to help it become much more three-dimensional. Create a more watery mix, and I'll run this along the top edge. And this is going to brighten it just a little bit. It's going to add just a little bit of that warmer hue. It's going to be a lot darker than what we have at the top, but it will create a separation, and it will show that the top of the candle holder is in fact brighter than the bottom portions. And the farther down we get, the darker we want it to be. So once I'm done with this area, I can actually continue moving down because I start to run out of pigment, and then we can work that in. And we just keep doing that until we get to the bottom. Though, we're going to brighten it just slightly, more titanium white, maybe a little bit more burnt sienna to retain saturation. Because the front and the back have that highlight from reflected light both in the room and the window, we're going to apply that slightly to the center here, to the center here, to the center of this little area, and then this area as well. But just towards the top of that. Now let's get you a little bit closer and start blending. Now this should all still be pretty wet, so we are able to just drag this to the left and right. Purposefully going to apply more pressure here, less pressure there. Try to get something that's a bit less perfect. I want the metal to look slightly tarnished and a bit more unique. Lots of little taps and drags. You can see how it's picking up, ripping some of that wet paint off. Looks good. And then we'll do it here. Get some nice ASMR on the canvas. You have this little dark area, this little dark area, and this little dark area separating things. Have a little bit more of that highlight towards the edge. As it moves downwards, it dissipates, there's less and less. But it's a very easy way of just building a little bit of brighter value and dimension. Now I'm filling in the area in between, the highlight and the edge. There we go. Then, because we've brightened a lot of this, I want to brighten the top. Always one thing leads to another with these highlights. So I'll just do a little bit more up here. Recapture that glow effect. Make it distinct. All right, so taking a step back, I let it dry, then did a little bit of a darker wash just to kind of make those colors a little bit more ambiguous. It's still drying yet again, but I think this is an area that we kind of go back to on and off as we develop everything else to find the right balance of, is it too bright, is it too dark? We want minor changes between these levels, but we do want them to be minor. So at this point, I'm taking a break and I'm heading up into this area. Going to do so with the larger flat-headed brush, and I'm going to begin towards the top because it's going to have the brightest of our pigments. Grabbing some of our titanium white, a little bit of our cad yellow deep hue, a little bit of our yellow ochre, a little bit of our burnt sienna, and this is really meant to be an almost white, but it is a warm white. There's room to brighten it, but not a lot. And I think that's a beautiful start right there. So I'm going to carefully use the corners of this brush to craft along all of the edges and protrusions towards the top of our candle. You can see how the wax builds and flows in these interesting ways. Then we'll grab a bit more of that paint. Make sure that it's nice and thick. And then I'll begin moving it downwards, starting with the edges, like so. Then we'll work into the middle, and we'll change our mix to be a bit more yellow. Hint of our cad red, Naples yellow. We'll just warm it up a little bit. Like that. You can see that despite the fact that we're trying to make it thick, it is still a little bit thin. We can see the canvas showing through, but that's okay. We will just do multiple layers. Now as we continue down, we're going to grab more cad red, more yellow ochre, more cad yellow. It's going to become a bit more of an orange, a peachy orange for this portion. We'll do a soft blend into the previous application. We'll bring that down. Very good. We have some interesting protrusions of melted wax along the edge. I'm just using the corner of the brush to catch those. There we go. Love this brush. Can do those sharp edges, can do these larger areas. Again, as we move down, we're going to change our mix. Now we're going to start incorporating some of our burnt sienna in with that red, titanium white, again we have some nice protrusions on the edge. Make sure it's nice and thick through there. Then we go back and we do our blend while that top area is still wet into that peachy orange. So we're changing our color pretty dramatically as we work our way down. We're not done. I'm just going to make my brush a little bit damp. Grab a bit more of that burnt sienna, a bit more of the cad red. We're moving away from the yellows. We're moving more into the reds, and for the first time in this mix, we'll incorporate a little bit of our Mars black. We're getting farther and farther away from the light at the top. And this can be a little bit darker than the highlight that we have on the brass. So I'm actually going to use a little bit more Mars black in this mix. It needs to be brighter than what we have on the sides, but darker than what we have in front of it. So we'll just work that up. Very good. And we need a good transition, so I'm back to the brighter pigment. And we'll work that back down. It's a lot of back and forth, but we do find our way. Now this is only layer number 1. Let's get on to layer number 2 once it's dry. Now for layer number 2, we need to make sure this is dry, and it is. We are yet again going to start at the top, and again that does mean titanium white, a little bit of each of our yellows, but not a lot of each. Going to refine with the smaller flat-headed brush, and this mix is a little bit more peachy. There is a hint of red in it where the initial didn't have it, and that's just because my water, my brushes, and my pigments are starting to get a little bit mixed in the process. It's okay. If we want more of that yellow, we can re-interject it, but I'm only going to bring this down to here. Then I will grab a bit of water. I will start grabbing a bit of that burnt sienna. Again, both of our yellows, a little bit of our red, and we'll start applying that more peachy orange right under it. You can see this mix is already a lot more thick than the first. And we'll do a blend from that highlight into our next pigment. You know what, I think I did like the yellow at the top. Let's re-interject that quickly. Taking that titanium white, a little bit of that cad yellow. It's just more interesting when we move from the yellow at the top to the peaches. And we do need more and more layers, so we might as well. We can also do it with a little bit of a glaze in the near future. But so far, I like that. I think it looks thick. I think it looks very candle-like in texture. Let's continue interjecting Cad Red and Cad Yellow into our white mix. Build those beautiful transitional oranges. We have the slight protrusions of wax on the sides. I love these colors. Such a luminosity to them. There we go. Lots of soft taps from one color into the next to get those soft blends. I'm not applying much pressure with my brush at all. Now we do need to get this darker because it does need to be quite dark by the bottom, so we need to start that transition. So more of our burnt sienna, more of our Cad Red. A bit burnt sienna heavy, especially when we have the titanium white still in the mix, because the titanium white and the red will make more of a pink, and we don't want a lot of pink. We can have a little bit of it. We don't want an abundance. We can add a hint of this mid value underneath the protrusions of the highlights. We'll have that work its way down. Oh, this is going to be a really nice candle. I can already tell. Maybe we get a bit more of the highlight from before. Just create more of a transition. Really love the yellowish hue in there. I think we might do a little bit more of a transition with it. Already that's better. But we do need it darker. So burnt sienna, Cad Red, a little bit of our Mars black in that mix. There is still titanium white in it, so it's not just going to be dark. It's not going to be too saturated. It is still a good in-between pigment. And soft little taps and drags is going to make this nice and smooth. Then yet again, we move darker as we move down. Grab more of our Cad Red, restore the saturation, the warmth. Might work this underneath some of the other bottom portions. There we go. That's a great transition. We're not done though. We can make this candle look more dimensional, more interesting with some additional melted wax, and that might just be the next step. That said, make sure that all the areas are nice and thick where you want them to be, and then we can move along together. There we go. Okay, so taking a step back, I love how this is coming. I think it's nice and full and thick. I think that the oranges create great complementary colors with the blues. We finally have our main subject to latch on, and at this point I'm very happy. We can make this more dimensional, and that's what we're going to do next. And I'm going to do so by taking our smaller liner brush. We're going to create a value kind of similar to what we have right here. That is with both of our yellows, hint of our red, a lot of our titanium white, And then we'll take this from up here and we'll just do a little bit of a highlight from a drip. It comes from the top, it gets lost right there. We're going to make our mix a little bit darker now. A little bit of that Naples yellow, burnt sienna, and then we'll do under it more of that highlight. We'll have it continue to drip down, like so. You can have little bumps, like that. Do a soft blend towards the right. That way it looks like that highlight has a sharp edge and then it dissipates as the wax melts and moves that way. And then as the pigment runs out, we can do a little bit more towards the bottom. I'm also going to use this to incorporate a little bit of a highlight on some of the surrounding wax on the sides. Like that. Just a hint. Just a hint. And this is going to add a lot of dimension. Going to make it a lot more unique. Now maybe I make it a bit darker yet again. We can add this towards the back. That'll make it more interesting. Soften it, sometimes with our finger. Never too old to finger paint. Big believer in that. There we go. You don't need this much highlight down towards the bottom, but I really like it. At least I think I do. We'll take a couple of steps back and we'll see how we feel about it as a whole. But so far I'm happy. We can just add a little bit more of this highlight throughout. Just little drips of wax. Nothing too abundant or dramatic, but there we go. Now we'll move towards the top and we can have a lot of fun painting this flame right here after we move over to the left and we paint the reflections of it right here. I want to start with this because this is really the most important one and I want to get a good grasp on it before I jump into this. Look at this as kind of a practice round and then we can have some fun finishing off the big one. Now to complete these flames, I want to first complete the candles, which are a reflection of this, but they're a little bit darker and they're a little bit more hazy. So I'm going in with the filbert brush because it has those nice round edges, great for blendable spots like this. We'll grab some of our cad yellow, titanium white, a little bit of our yellow ochre. Again, we want this to be darker than that, but not by a lot. Hint of our burnt sienna. And then we can go in and start sketching that out. I've already drawn it on the canvas using a little bit of Conte, but now I'm going to draw it with the actual pigment. We're going to start on the top. We're going to work our way down. We're going to let that pigment dissipate because we only have a reflection of the top. We don't really have a reflection of the bottom and it lessens the farther down we get. It also gets more orange. So I'll do a more red burnt sienna heavy mix. Make sure my brush is a little bit damp for this. Work that in there. And that's a beautiful counterpart color. We'll work it to the side as well because we have a second reflection of that same candle. And I'm not going in with a highlight right now, I'm just going in with that second color because I don't want it to be too bright and I want it to be slightly lesser than this one. If we want, we can grab a hint of that highlight and we can work it on the top, but for the most part I want the majority of it to be a little bit darker. And then again, more of an orange mix, so cad red, cad yellow, a little bit of titanium white, a little bit more. Hint of our Mars black. And I do mean a hint. Take off the excess elsewhere. And if I keep the edges a little bit blended, I'm very happy. Not looking for anything too sharp visually. That's why we are working with a filbert brush. We want those blends. And again, it lessens and it gets lost in the window. Try to make a lot of this look streaky towards the bottom. That way it looks like it's in the window and it's having that same effect. Maybe we brighten it just a hint towards the top. It's a little bit more opaque towards the top as well. More transparent through there. But good start. We'll probably go back to it. However, right now I do want yellow, a little bit less of our yellow ochre, titanium white, because we are about to do the really fun part. Grab that, head up here. I'm applying a lot of paint towards the bottom, I'm letting it dissipate towards the top. And this is the reflection of our flame. I want the bottom to be a little bit larger. That's why I'm putting the pressure at the bottom, and then I relieve pressure, it makes the brush smaller towards the top. This will need to be brighter than this, but we want that first soft application, making little horizontal, vertical, I do mean vertical strokes. That way the movements coincide with the movements of the window and the water. We'll grab more of our titanium white, bump it up, make it brighter, make it more opaque. I'm going to apply this in the middle, but try to keep the yellow, the more transparent mix on the side still visible. So I'm not bringing this all the way through what we just applied, just in the center, and then I'm blending it out softly. There we go. So we have one, we have another. I'm really excited. I think this is going to turn out wonderfully. I'll bring this a little bit closer down towards the candle. Now yet again, more titanium white. It's in the mix. It's not a pure titanium white, but we are getting closer and closer. There we go. Really like the energy in this. It's a great mood, a great atmosphere. Already feeling nice and cozy. Yet again. Really just trying to capture the energy of the night I took it, you know? Maybe we add a little bit of that highlight towards the top of this candle, towards the top of this candle. Keep that looking good. Let's take a step back. I love how these two are looking. I think they're nice and bright. I just keep building up the highlights in the center until you feel like it's, again, brighter than this, comparable to this, but not quite as bright. And it might take a couple of layers to make it as opaque as you want, but I think I could do one more once it fully dries. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to head over here, and we're going to jump into the area we've been waiting for. I'll grab a good amount of our titanium white, a little bit of our cad red, yellow ochre. We'll mix up a nice light orangish red, maybe a hint of our cad yellow as well. Again, a lot of pressure at the bottom. I'll have it dissipate as we move towards the top. And then I'll start rounding the edges. Make it look nice and soft. We've had our practice round with the other ones. Now we can come in and just do great work. I want this to be nice and big. Certainly bigger than what we had right over here. And I like that, but I do want it to have a good glow. So I'm going to, just with a wet brush, don't really have any pigment on it, soften these edges pretty dramatically towards the sides and the top, like that. You don't really have a hard edge anymore, it's just a nice glow. Can even use your finger to further soften it, but we do want this to be nice and soft. Then we will mix more of an orange, cad red, cad yellow, a little bit of our yellow ochre. At this point, all of this is pretty covered in pigment, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to add some of this warmth into our past application. That way we have an orange base to build on. And we're going to get more and more yellow as we work into the center with more opaque applications. Wanted to go in with something that wasn't this pigment because it wouldn't be bright enough on the background. It just wouldn't be opaque. So we went with a more titanium heavy lead, worked into our orange with almost a wash, and now we're going to go back to our yellow, a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of cad yellow. Work that down into the center. And this needs to be a lot brighter, but I really like it as a transitional pigment, like so. Going to soften the edges just a little bit. I'm not going to blend them out dramatically, but just a little bit. We want the middle to be as opaque as we can get it, so very little actual work being done in there because we don't want to make it overworked. Easy thing to do at this stage. That said, let's get you a little bit closer. So now we are going to bump up that mixture with more titanium white, increase the value, work that in that central area. You can see that I'm leaving the orange on both sides. And then we start to do a slight soft blend into it. There's more of that orange hue towards the top and less towards the bottom. We want the bottom to be thicker. We want the bottom to be a little bit brighter as well. And the titanium white heavy mixes don't stop there. We go in again. Continue to build that up. Make it nice and strong. You can still see some of that dark pigment showing through, and that's okay for now, but we do want to layer it until this feels wholly opaque. I also want the base, as you can see, to be a fairly nice, sharp application. So it's softer on the edges, it's brighter towards the bottom. There we go. It's getting a little tacky, which means soon we'll be able to go back in and add another thick layer. Now, while we let that dry, I'm actually going to switch on over back to the larger flat-headed brush. Make sure it is nice and damp, and I'm going to do a wash over our candle. I just want this bottom part to be a little bit darker. You don't have to do this if you like how bright it is. I just feel like mine could have a bit more of a heavy contrast from this into this. So I'm going to mix up a reddish brown, so cad red, burnt sienna, Mars black, a little bit of our Naples yellow. I'll make it extremely wet, like so. I'm going to head into the bottom, and I'm just going to work this up like so. Then towards the top, because we can't have a line like that, might do more of a horizontal application, might do a little bit of a blend with the finger. Take the pigment off of this brush, go back in, create those soft blends yet again. And even go in with a different brush, or just wipe the remaining water off of this. There we go. I think I like it a lot better, darker, like that. We can also blend it out with our filbert, should we want to. It does have those nice rounded edges. Right now I don't have any pigment on the brush, just water. Already it's doing a great job. I think I'm going to make a slightly brighter mix of that wash. A little more titanium white, a little more cad yellow. Throw that in between. You can actually start painting if you want to. It doesn't just have to be a wash. Going to create more of a bright mix for the top. There we go. And again, right here, grab a bit more of that bright, almost titanium white. Work that into the top, down, create a soft transition. But I think that's much better, much more stark. Now we're actually going to head down on our painting for a minute. Again, while we wait for the light to dry, I'm going to grab a little bit of my cad red, cad yellow, mix up a nice bright orange, abundance of our titanium white there. And if it becomes a little too pink, we just re-interject our yellows. But I'm going to do some little taps of highlight in the metal down here. And the idea is that it's not a perfect metal. We have lots of little areas that protrude and catch light. We want to give it that good texture that it has the potential to have. So I'm just doing lots of little taps, sometimes a drag. We're letting it lessen as we move out towards the edges. We're just trying to make sure that the metal here has good character and good texture. A little bit of a sparkle, a sheen to it in different areas. So again, I start in the center. I work my way to the left or right. I let my pigment dissipate. Already it's so much better. Then when I have almost no pigment, we can come down into some of the edges and then do little scuff marks through here. Sometimes it's a line, sometimes it's a tap. I have almost no pigment left on my brush. It's almost just water at this point, and that's how we want it. That way, it's not dramatic. Going back in with more of the highlight. And then once most of that pigment's off, tap some of that texture down here. We will have reflected light in a number of different ways, and we're just being playful. Kind of like the idea of rounding this slightly more. There we go. All right, now we'll take that step back. I believe this is fully dry, so I'll grab some more of my titanium white, hint of my cad yellow, and that's all I'm using for this mix, because this is going to be the brightest pigment on the canvas. And just like that, you can see it really come to life. We need to let it dry so that we can apply this in the way that we are. And I don't want this highlight to move all the way up. So I'll start going in with a more damp version of that same brush, and I'll just have it slowly dissipate. A couple little taps here and there, that way the flame itself can have a bit of personality. I might also take just a hint of it and roll it around the tops of our candles. Have it dissipate as it works its way down. But this will be a shared hue just a little bit. Just a little bit. We can add a hint into the base of these. Again, I wanted to make them brighter, but we needed to let them dry. And I wanted to see how this evolved before we jumped into that area. So far, really like how that looks. We can grab it, a little bit of our burnt sienna. We can do those taps towards the bottom here. Again, just interject a little bit of a bonus sheen, a sparkle, a texture. There we go. I think that looks lovely. So many little details you can add. Going to do a hint of it towards the back. Not as bright as the flames. I would say it's not even close, to be honest, but it does help make it cohesive and bring the eye throughout the piece in a more genuine way. In the process of interjecting this wash, we lost some of that dripping candle, so I'm just going to grab a little bit of my Cad Red, Cad Yellow, Yellow Ochre, Titanium White, mix up a good bright pigment on here. Don't normally mix with the liner, but I really don't need much pigment at all, so I think it'll be okay. We'll grab that. We'll come down from the top. We'll just re-interject this, giving it slightly more dimension. I think I also want to create a bit of a line right through there. Connects to the top, but it separates this from this, so it looks like this is on the other side of it. It's just kind of poking through. It's going to make it look a little bit more dimensional. And we'll lead this one in, so that's also more dimensional. It's not just on the side, it's in front, this is behind. Going back in, slightly more thick application. There we go. Do another if we want. At this point we're just figuring it out and trying to be a bit more exploratory. Maybe a little more white towards the top, like so. So yet again, taking a step back, I think I am going to add a little bit of a blue for under our flame. That means grabbing our Ultramarine, a little bit of our Titanium White, hint of our Mars Black, and we'll just connect this to the oranges. It's a brighter value than the blue that we have in the background, so you will still see it, and it'll just work its way underneath like that. We'll make a much brighter version, more Titanium White, and we'll have that kind of connect with this blue under area work its way down. We don't want a lot of this, just a hint of blue. But it cradles the base, it connects in the middle. And I know you're pretty far away, but that is intentional because it's not really about the application right now, it's about how it looks as a whole. And that's really our big focus. So once I have all of this applied, then we have our flame pretty much done. We could add more glow to it if we want, but I think what I really need to do is add the candle wick. So Mars black, maybe a little bit of that ultramarine blue, a little bit of our titanium white, and we'll just work this guy and do our candle like that. We'll do a little one in the background, a little one in the background. It's pretty stark, and I think that works quite nicely. I also want to go back in and add some highlights to our raindrops around here. The little bits that work their way down. We'll grab some titanium white, hint of that ultramarine blue. Now we're working with a very similar set of colors for multiple subjects. And for the areas that protrude, that stick out from these lines and that are close to the flame, we're going to add just a touch of light. I'm going to take a step back, make sure it looks good. Another little hint of it. And at this point, we are working on our touch-ups, making sure we love the piece as a whole, everything's cohesive, it works together. And I am really, really happy with it already. I think that created something warm, something pretty different than what we typically do here on the channel. I do a lot of landscapes, but this was so much fun. Again, I took the reference photo the other day, right before sitting down and watching the penguin. Very, very moody night, but it was a lot of fun. And I hope that you're feeling inspired. I hope you're feeling ready to go out and work on your rendition. I hope you're just pretty motivated. If you've been painting along, I hope that it looks lovely, that you're very happy with your rendition. If there are little areas you want to touch up, again, now is the time. We're just throwing extra highlights on and building some of the raindrops to be a bit more prominent. You could add some of these little blue speckles into the shadowy portions of the iron. I think that's, or the brass. I think that can be really nice. Just different effects. Here I'm going to create some elongated vertical markings in this, just for the sake of moving the eye up and down, making this less of a negative space. You don't have to do it. I had it in the initial drawing and I didn't build on it, but I think that it could work. I just didn't want to make it too dramatic. And there we are. As per usual, I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody out on Patreon for supporting the channel directly, for making this video, this lesson, all of them happen. Couldn't do it if it wasn't for you and that support. And we tried something new on Patreon. The drawing of this, it's not only the traceable up there, I also recorded the real-time drawing process of the traceable, and I posted that as well. So there's a bonus video you can watch where I do the sketch. I'm going to try to do that more often because I think it was really well received. Saw a lot of happy comments, and it's typically how I figure out what to do more of. Just kind of see what you guys like and give you more of that. But I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. If you would like the traceable, the reference photo, the sketch video, any of my bonus lessons, my ebook Acrylics for Beginners, you can get all of that up over on Patreon. There's a link to it in the video description. If you'd like to work with the same brushes I'm using, there's also a link to those in the video description. That way you don't have to kind of guess, am I using the right ones? Is it working the way it should? You know that you're working with exactly what I am. And I also post a picture of the materials up over on Patreon so you can see all of the brands and all of that. Tried working with a lot of golden pigments in this lesson. We're going to do a review up there in the next couple of weeks, I think. As somebody who has been painting predominantly with Winsor & Newton for quite some time. It's so hard to stop painting. I really just love the process, and putting down that brush is sometimes the hardest part of painting in general, you know? It'll be 2, 3 in the morning and you'll just say, you know what if I just painted for half an hour more? I hope you have lots of those experiences. I hope you feel inspired and motivated and, again, just ready to go out and make the best piece yet. Should definitely do more like this in the future. Might do another campfire soon. Really like painting the warmth and the light, and I think that's a necessary next step. I haven't painted a campfire, I don't think, in 2 years. It's been a while. I also want to do some more fall scenes. It's one of those times of the year where you just want to paint endlessly. There's too many subjects. Love working with oranges and these hues, so we'll definitely make the most of it. Again, though, would like to say a big thank you to you for taking the time, for being here, for working on this with me. I always love just having such a passionate, creative community, and thank you for all the comments on YouTube too. I feel like there have been a lot more lately, and it's always just a pleasure to see that the videos are being well received and you're having fun and you feel like you're learning, and really those comments, it makes it all worth it. So thank you for the kindnesses. Thank you for being here. I will see you next Saturday with yet another video. I will post the traceable, the material list, reference, all of that to the next lesson up on Patreon, I think on Wednesday. I think Wednesday is when we're going to be posting the traceables and the drawing videos for the lessons going forward. And I'm also working on the big 24 by 24 inch piece. So you'll see that bonus video up on Patreon pretty soon too. Thank you for being here. You have a lovely day, lovely afternoon. And above all, as always, stay creative.